Hi. Well, you can see that Jake and I got our haircuts today. He's looking pretty spiffy, and I've got a little mop on top. Probably the next haircut, I'll go and get a crew cut. I think the next few podcasts, we're going to talk about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. The one thing about getting old like me, I have a time machine right up here, and I can go back to various decades and think about different things. In 50s, reminds me of my first haircut. I ended up paying 75 cents throughout my my high school days. And now, today's haircut cost me about $22. And I gave my barber an $8 tip, so it was a $30 bill. Just imagine how many haircuts I could have gotten back in the 30s or in the 50s for $30. The other thing I was thinking about is the 50s is that was the age of the beginning of rock and roll. Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, so many of them. And during my last few years in high school, I was the weekend DJ for Teenage Dance. I remember the day the music died. I was DJing when we heard the word of the passing of Billie Holly and the Big Bopper. One of the songs that they sang was called Donna. And at the time, I had a crush on a grade 10 girl when I was in grade 12. Her name was Donna. Now, like all crushes, nothing really amounted to it. And she went on and became a mother and lived a very nice life. Whereas I went off, left Provincetown, and headed west. Now, the other thing I remember about the 50s is the phones on the wall where you picked up and you talked to an operator. And there were party lines. So you had to make sure when you picked up there's nobody else on the party line. Otherwise, they could eavesdrop on your conversation or you and theirs. And that party line or that operated line led to me meeting my wife, because back in 1969 Alberta was still using operators, and it was her that did a phone call for me, a long distance call, and from that call we arranged a blind date. That blind date ended up in a coming this year 56-year long marriage. Best phone call I ever made. The other thing I think about is the price of things. We're talking about $4 gas in the States. Well, it's already $5 in that neighborhood here for a liter. That comes out to about $8 a gallon in U.S. prices. Now, fortunately, the Canadian dollar is a little less, so when you figure that in, it comes out to about $5 a gallon. But I can remember getting filled up on 19 cents. It used to be, I'd pick up some friends, they all chipped in a quarter, and with that dollar I had gas for the entire day. And that brings me to another thing that we did in the 50s, and maybe still going on today, I don't know. There's no high school in my hometown anymore, so this may not happen. But Provincetown is basically 2 3 mile strips. One's called Commercial Street. It's a one-way street. And the back street is called Bradford Street, and it's a two-way street. And as teenagers, once we got our license, we would drive up Commercial Street, down Bradford Street. We do the circuit. It's amazing how many times you can do that. Never get bored, particularly in Provincetown. And one of the places halfway in Commercial Street was a pharmacy called Adams. And that's where we all hung out. It was down from our high school and right across from the town hall. And it was where everybody hung out. One of the great things about Adams Pharmacy is they had the Coke dispensing machine. And you can mix your drinks. You could add cherry or vanilla along with the Coke. And that's where we met before school started, and that's where we gathered after school. one of the more interesting things that happened to me one time was we had just come back from our senior trip where we had gone to New York and Washington and just returned, and I was in with a friend and we're doing the circuit. And as we passed Adams Pharmacy, my friend's girlfriend came out and he turned to wave to her, but forgot about the telephone pole that leaned out into the street, and we crunched into it. Well, I got out. I had some glass shards in my head, cut open a little bit. So I walked from there to the doctor's office and got patched up, and he put a butterfly tape, and away I went. But a few minutes later, I noticed my friend who was driving was in there, and the doc was picking glass out of a certain part of his anatomy. He couldn't have gotten out of the driver's side because of the hit. It had jammed his door. So he slid across the seat, to go out my door. But what he didn't know was those shards of glass that had hit my head had also blanketed the seat. And as he slid across, he picked up a few shards. It was funny to me, not so funny for him, because I can still remember him with the doctor with the tweezers. And it brings a smile to my face, but I'm not sure if it brings a smile to his face. Those are some of the things of the 50s that I remember. The other one was probably the saddest, maybe the best thing that happened to me, is that you got your license when you're 16, and we usually had a senior or junior prom that year. Well, I had arranged for a date in a town about 30 miles away with a beautiful girl that I met at a scout camp. Well, we arranged it, and I was supposed to pass my driver's license a couple days before, but I didn't. I didn't get it the first time through. Well, Jake's a little anxious. You want to get down, buddy? Huh? Not interested in this story? Don't blame you. So, I went to call her, and the line was busy the day I went to call her. And the day of the prom, my scoutmaster asked me if I wanted to help him, and I said yes, but we had to go by my date's house to let her know. Well, we drove by around noon, and as we were driving by, I saw her and a mom heading into town. Well, I couldn't contact her. We didn't have cell phones in those days. So I stood her up, basically. A year later, I met her again and apologized to her, but the relationship had gone south, to say the least. I'd gotten my license about 3 weeks after the prom. A little late. What is it? $1 short and an hour late. Anyway, those are my thoughts about the 50s, at least some of them. There are others. But I thought, with today's economy, 75 cents an hour for an hour for wages, 75 cents for a haircut. Kind of evened out. I have more memories of the 50s, and I may fill you in later. But the next time we'll talk about the 60s, which was a very interesting decade for me. Bye. Have a good day.